Well, that's a step in the right direction.
What's up, everybody? Today's a big day. Little box office brawler. I have a great pleasure of being invited or being joined by some amazing personalities here today to talk about James Cameron's Aliens 1986. And let's just not waste any time. Let's introduce, of course, Critical Drinker to start with. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining.
Hello, sir. Pleasure to be here as always.
And you were talking about, before we started the stream, you're wondering glasses or no glasses. And I said, I wanted to see Will. I want to see Will. I want to see the man behind the glasses. Yeah. So yeah, we appreciate you coming, buddy. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
And then of course we have Random Film Talk back again. Good to see you, man. How's it going?
Hello, all good. Thank you for the invite. I'm glad that we've graduated you from T2 up to Aliens now. We're working through the James Cameron catalog.
Yeah, I'm like 13 now. I'm on 14, so we're just getting a little older as we go. But yeah,
wait till you hit the abyss, man. Then you're in for quite the experience.
Oh God, yeah.
So I saw the abyss, and I hated the abyss. I don't know if you guys like that one or not.
I don't mind it. It's definitely not in my top tier of James Cameron movies, but I can tolerate it.
I like it a lot, but yeah, it's nowhere near as good as T2 or Aliens.
Yeah, we were talking about how this is a fun one, we need some more fun. And I know somebody that knows fun very well, my friend Kyle Corwith. So Kyle, good to see you, buddy.
Starting off real strong with I hate the abyss.
I know. We have mostly positive things to say today, though. It's nice that we're not trashing a film. Every week we talk, I have my Gen Z reviews, and there's a couple of us 20-year-old guys with some extra guests like Kyle here and Random that come and join us to talk about the classics that we're experiencing for the first time. And it's always pretty positive. So it's nice being able to talk about something positive every week, even though there's so much negative going on in the world. So I'm glad that, today, here we are again to talk about another big positive, which is Aliens. And if it weren't for you, Drinker, or Random, of course, I wouldn't care about this movie at all, really. I saw Alien for the first time like a little over a year ago. I wasn't that impressed for some reason, a young, stupid mindset, I guess. Then I rediscovered Alien and watched Aliens, and my gosh, this thing, it's special. So thank you for redirecting me straight.
No, we got you there in the end. I think you came on open bar and you just came in hot with that, saying I've never seen T2, I've never seen Aliens, I don't know what the fuss is about. And
everyone wanted me hung.
Yeah, we thought we need to get this boy an education, and so it's good that you've caught up. So well done.
Yeah, man. So I think we might as well just get right into the content here because Aliens. There's a lot to cover. This is a dense movie. It's fun, but there's a lot of substance to this. And really, I've never been a big James Cameron fan. Mostly just because I'm so used to modern James Cameron, and I'm hearing what he's saying on the headlines, and I see Avatar, and I want to die when I watch Avatar 2 at IMAX, and I'm sitting there for over 3 hours straight. But, going back to watch Aliens, it's kind of a privilege to watch something like this because there's really nothing like it. And even to this day, I haven't seen a film quite like Aliens. It's really kind of a standalone. I hearken a lot from The Thing. I kind of wonder how much those two movies kind of fed from each other. On the top of my head, I'm not sure if The Thing came out first or if Aliens came out.
The Thing was a few years earlier.
Oh, it was earlier. Okay.
Alien was 79. The Thing, I believe, was 82, and then this was 86.
Yeah. And I think they took a very smart approach with this one where they could have tried to do just another horror movie and tried to replicate what they did with Alien, but they were smart enough to realize we can't just do the same thing again. The tension of the aliens isn't going to be there this time because people kind of know what they're dealing with. So where do you take it? Well, as you see in the poster there, this time it's war. What happens if you send the military in to try and take these things on? Then where are you going to end up? And I think it was an extremely smart decision to do that, and it was an even smarter decision to get James Cameron in to direct it, because this was him really approaching the peak of his powers. Late 80s, early 90s, that was peak James Cameron, and the result is just this supremely rewatchable movie that functions not just as an action flick, but also as a bit of sci-fi horror, a thriller. It's tense, it's action-packed, it's got the the bit of intrigue to it as well. It expands the scope of the Alien universe, but keeps it pretty consistent with the first movie. It's the ultimate example of how to do a highly successful sequel that doesn't cheapen the original.
Yeah, like it builds on what was already there in Alien, and what was already there was Alien really implied a world that existed outside of the scope of the film. And Aliens does the same thing, but with Aliens, you actually get to see quite a lot of it. Which actually, this is a question: is the version of the film that you watched the director's cut or the theatrical?
I watched the theatrical. I wish I didn't even know about the director's cut until earlier today. So I know I'm missing some content, unfortunately.
Okay. I mean, the theatrical is still amazing. Drinker, which one do you prefer?
Oh, it's an interesting one because I'm honestly like 50-50 on the bits that I like about the extended cut and the bits that I don't. I like the smart gun sequence. I don't love seeing Hadley's Hope before the outbreak. And I'll tell you why, because I love this notion of we only get to see the aftermath of it. I don't necessarily want to see when it's full of life and it's a functioning colony and then how the outbreak happens. I think it's way more tense and way more haunting to see just as it was in the aftermath. So there's bits I love about the extended cut. There's other bits I would probably cut out. And the bits with Ripley and her daughter, I would keep that in. I do think it adds an extra layer of depth to the relationship between her and Newt. And Sigourney Weaver apparently was super fucking pissed that they cut that out. So I can understand why, because she does some pretty damn good acting in those scenes as well. So
is it like a lot of added content in the director's cut?
It's probably less than 10 minutes.
It's about 15 to 20 minutes, but honestly, the fact that you said it was only 10, well, that just speaks to the quality of like how tightly paced the movie is because even the extended version or the director's cut, which is 2 hours and 35 minutes, I think, excluding credits, it blows by. Like you really do not feel it drag at any point, even though it's an extended version of the film. Kyle, have you seen both versions?
Yes, I watched the theatrical this time, and which was funny because when I downloaded it, it was supposed to be the director's cut, and I started watching it. And hey, wait, where's that scene with the daughter and the old photo of the daughter being old? And it wasn't there. So I just, this is the theatrical, obviously. But it was very telling that scene I was thinking back on, and also the moment on LV 426, where we see the colonists approach the alien ship. So it tells me that those scenes had an impact in which I wanted to see them. So especially the daughter sequence, the scene with that is,
Well, Kyle, what you said, it kind of like leads me into a segue as to my first question, because I'm really curious because, this movie, obviously it's high quality and, everybody talks about it, especially like, millennials, Gen X. And then when it comes to Gen Z, I haven't heard anything about it from anyone in my age range. And I'm kind of wondering this. So it's a high quality film, of course. Everyone that's seen it loves it. I haven't heard anything bad about it. So I'm kind of wondering if there's like, when this movie came out, was it an impressionable time in your life where it kind of spoke to where you were at that point in time?
Well, I mean, for me, like it came out really, like when it was in the cinema, I was probably like 3 years old. So I obviously didn't see it. I'm not that old, Jesus Christ. I didn't see it probably until the 90s. And I probably would have been about 9 or 10, I think, when I first caught it. And it would have just been, it was on TV. I would have ended up watching it with my dad or something. And probably he was laughing his ass off because I was scared of the Xenomorphs. But, it was very much a later thing for me. But I was just, entranced by it because I think I saw Aliens before I saw the first Alien. Just that's the way it happened to be. It was probably shown on TV more often. And so I filled in the backstory later, obviously, when I watched the first movie. But I was just, as a kid, I was like, oh God, this is so cool. Like they're like futuristic Marines fighting monsters. The pulse rifles are like the coolest fucking weapons in history. And, it's just this brilliant, exhilarating adventure with lots of like scary monsters in it. So young me was absolutely loving it. And obviously, as you get older, more mature, you learn to appreciate just the actual technical skill and the writing skill that went into this. And you see it in a whole different light as you get older.
Well, then I have a question. Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
So since you saw the second the first time, when was the first time you saw the first? Just I want to understand the relationship you have with the second and the first, and how that impacted how you saw the first film after seeing the second.
Probably would have been a year or so later, I guess, that I would have seen it. And again, I just would have relied on catching it on TV and then watching it like, oh yeah, this is the story that actually led to Aliens, and then watch that again as a pretty young kid, and probably enjoyed it less back then because again, it doesn't really deliver on action or anything like that. It's much more a tense, bit of sci-fi horror. But again, you come to appreciate it more as you get older and more mature, and you appreciate like the real work that went into it, and particularly for a movie that was made in 1979. How bloody good it looks even now, how well it's aged, all of that stuff is just it's super impressive about a film like that. And I think that's always been my relationship with the Aliens movies, that I got into the action-y one first, then came to appreciate the sci-fi horror aspect of the first one, and we won't talk about the third one.
I think we might have to, man. Just a little bit.
Yeah, I've been wondering if I should like progress further. I'm already at Alien, so do I watch Alien 3? And I guess that's a no.
It's got it. If you can get through the first 15 minutes, man, maybe, but it's rough.
There are definitely good parts of Alien 3. It's obviously a massive drop off compared with 1 and 2. I wouldn't say it's bad. But if you love Alien and you love the way it ended, do not watch Alien 3.
Yikes. That's not an endorsement so much.
No. Brawler, do you know anything of what they did at the beginning?
No.
Okay.
No, nothing.
Maybe it should stay that way.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
We should ask him to guess. If you were going to ruin the end of Aliens, what would you do at the start of Alien 3?
What? No spoilers, Cal. No spoilers. Don't ruin it for me. You bastard.
You said you weren't going to watch it,
bastard.
So, what harm is there?
What about you, Random? Where were you like when you watched Aliens for the first time?
I think I definitely saw Alien first, but I must have seen them both like within the same few days because I picked up the DVD box set that came out, the quadrilogy, in 2004, which had all the bonus stuff on it. Really, really good box set, and I've still got it. And I had already seen Alien, which I liked it a lot, but like you said, Drinker, like I didn't really appreciate it fully until I had seen it maybe 3 or 4 more times. And now, honestly, it's one of my favorite movies. I would say that Alien is probably a better movie than Aliens, which might be a hot take, but Aliens is absolutely more fun to watch. It's more entertaining. It's more rewatchable.
That's 100% my take on it as well. It's definitely a more worthy movie, and it's probably more artistically relevant. It's just the Aliens is a lot more fun.
It's so much fun. Yeah. But at the time, Aliens, when I first saw Aliens, it was like, right, well, that is now just my favorite movie that I have ever seen. It just went straight to the top of the list, and it's remained up there for, 20 years now at this point.
Dang.
It's so good. And honestly, like the fact that Alien and Aliens are as good as they are is why I still haven't lost hope. Every movie that came out since then, including the TV show that just came out, all of that has done its best to make me slowly lose hope and lose interest in the franchise. It's not happened yet. And if Ridley Scott makes, finishes his Prometheus and Covenant trilogy, I'll be in the cinema watching it. I will give him the opportunity to finish his trilogy, and I'll see if it's any good.
If not, you'll make a video like 6 hours long destroying it, right?
I might. I'm tempted to do that for Prometheus anyway, because I think there's a lot in Prometheus that I like, but I haven't rewatched it in a while, so I might change my tune on that.
It's just we have to come to terms with the fact that the Ridley Scott we have today is not the same Ridley Scott that you had back in the 80s when he was just peak. Sadly,
I wonder how that happens. Is it like political stuff, or is it just senility?
I think it's just age in his case. He it's weird because like he is way fucking older than you actually think he is. Like he still looks relatively spry. It looks like a man in his early 70s, maybe. I think he's pushing 90 at this point, isn't he? He's super fucking old.
Well, let's not forget that Ridley Scott was the director. He didn't write Alien, and that movie is a formation of various ideas from screenwriters. And so you see the evidence right there that, when James Cameron comes on to make Aliens, it's not just because it was successful the first time because of Ridley Scott. Is you get on great creative minds to make a great film. Now, Ridley Scott has shown himself to be a visual, masterful storyteller. But in terms of narrative, that's a different story.
Well, that's also why I think it's quite impressive in the case of Aliens, is that James Cameron used to know how to write movies. Aliens is not just an amazingly directed movie. He's a very hands-on director. He knows exactly what he wants, and he had to, like, the behind-the-scenes stories from the making of this movie is pretty ridiculous. Because it's nuts. Like, he was having to try and like get people in, because he's American. Or is he American or Canadian? Am I mixed up there?
He's Canadian, but he's not a polite Canadian. He's a complete asshole.
Yeah,
I think you need that in a director.
He's an outlier Canadian.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been brought in as like this brand new director who has made one movie, essentially Terminator. He was credited on another, but he didn't really make it. So he made the Terminator. He's a one-trick pony as far as the crew's concerned. And a lot of the crew who were based in London were the guys that worked on Alien with Ridley Scott. And they thought that like James Cameron had kind of swooped in as some nobody like who wants to take over the world, and they were not interested in playing nice and working with him. So he had to really like hardball them and make them work, really long hours. And apparently it wasn't a lot of fun, but he just didn't. He had a totally different way of working. But he also wrote the movie, which I feel like it's a really bold decision from Fox to be like, okay, James Cameron, you've made one movie, and yes, it was successful. Here's the key to Aliens. Like, we're gonna let you make the sequel to Alien. Like, I mean, they must have had so much faith in his script and also the quality of Terminator.
And also Star Wars coming out helps.
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
Star
it's
Wars,
still being in play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it was that particularly drew them to Cameron. Obviously, it turned out to be an extremely wise decision. To pick up on what Random was talking about there, there's absolutely wild stories of the clashes that he had with the British film crew there. Partly because the Brits had a very unique way of working where they would take tea breaks like every half hour. It was like ridiculous. And Cameron's a pretty hard driving director, and so he'd be setting up a shot, and all of a sudden everyone would just fucking leave the set to go and have like tea and biscuits. And so he decided he was gonna make his impression on them and just set the tone. So he goes over to this tea lady who's got like her trolley of cakes and biscuits and whatever, and he's like, so how much would this all cost? Like, if I just bought the whole thing, what would it be? And she's like, I don't know, £200 or something. So he gets his wallet out and he gives her the money, and then he just says to her, could you do me a favor and just like stand off to the side there, just stand back? She's like, okay. And without a hesitation, he just puts his foot up and boots this thing right across the room. All the food and everything goes everywhere, and he just rounds on the crew who had been waiting there and says like, we're not here to have fucking tea breaks, we're here to make a movie. Get back to work or you're all fired. And that was basically him setting the tone. I mean, you've got to admire the balls on the guy, if nothing else.
For real.
Yeah. And like he also fired the original cinematographer. I can't remember who he was, but this was not a guy who was just pulled in to do this. This was a guy who had an established career making like Hollywood movies. And it's because one of the earliest scenes that they were filming was the nest, which is the version we see is very, very dark and slimy, and it's all filmed very close up. And the cinematographer had lit that all wrong. Like, according to Cameron, he was like, this is lit completely wrong. And they ended up just having like a full-on argument in front of the rest of the crew, and they ended up just firing him and getting someone else. Like, the balls on that. This is not the James Cameron of today who has made like the two most successful movies of all time. This is a guy who had made one movie, and he had the balls to behave like this. But yeah, it's impressive.
Didn't he also have the balls? Didn't he also have the balls to, what was it? Did he marry Sigourney Weaver and the girl from Terminator, or did he just go out with them?
No, he married Linda Hamilton. I don't think he ever dated Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, he didn't?
No, he was married to Gail Ann Hurd, who was the producer on Aliens.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, he gets around.
There's a neat little fact about her as well. You'll recall, in the air vent sequence where they're trying to escape after, like, it's really come to the climax of the movie. They've been chased into the air vents to try and get back to the dropship, and Vasquez gets ambushed by one of the aliens that comes down the air shaft and jumps on her, and she's firing at it at point blank range with her handgun. That was actually Gale Ann Hurd who did that, because the actress playing Vasquez didn't want to use a gun at close range like that. She was a bit nervous about doing it. As it turns out, Gale was firearm certified and she was super comfortable with weapons. So they just dressed her up in Vasquez's clothes and they shoot it really close up. So it's really just her arms and whatever that you can see, and just had her blast this thing at point blank range. But yeah, she got quite hands-on with this movie.
Yeah, that Gale producer sounds like a badass. Can't say the same for Kathleen Kennedy, though.
Can see her doing this.
Right? Yeah.
Yikes. I would love her to insert herself into a Star Wars movie. That would just be great.
She has. Have you heard of Rey?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, this is like, so a question I had just right off the bat with Aliens was, at the end of Alien, this just kind of came to mind earlier today when I watched, the first Alien again, was, she learns from Mother that the corporation pretty much, they took the lambs to the slaughter to pick up that alien. They did not have any care in the world that for the crew's safety. That's pretty bad. And I don't know how she would have any sort of respect or feel comfortable enough to work with that corporation ever again. But yet at the beginning of this movie, she seems pretty welcome to just kind of open her arms, get back involved. It's kind of like she forgot that whole plot that
I
was
think
used against her.
Well, her initial take is like, I've got no interest in this mission. Like, I don't want to get back involved in this. Like, I saw what happened last time. I barely made it out alive. I think it's what triggers it is just like her recurring nightmares and the fact that she knows she's never going to get over this thing unless she, as Burke puts it, gets back on the saddle. Gets back on the horse, and kind of excises these demons. And that's what motivates her ultimately. She's got nothing else, like, because she's working a dead end job. She can't get any assignments as flight crew or anything because all her license has been revoked. Really, this is her last shot. So I don't think she's really like welcoming them back with open arms. She just seems like she's got no other choice.
Well, and in the director's cut, her daughter is dead by this point. So that's clear. She has nothing. Like, we're 57 years on, we can infer that basically everyone she knew is gone. So this is her life. This is all she's got.
Yeah.
And then she is not even able to do that, which is why she ends up going back. I also think that like Burke plays a bit of a part in it, and I think that's part of what this movie does like really, really well. Is like the bait and switch with Burke. I guess we can talk about him a little bit in a little bit, but like, they present him as someone that Ripley can probably trust. He's not particularly likable, but he's a very sort of slimy corporate guy, but he doesn't seem to be like a complete asshole. He seems to be like the kind of guy you don't want to spend too much time with, but he's not like evil. And it gets revealed later on that this man is like, you don't need to be worrying about the Marines. You need to be worrying about this guy.
Yeah.
He's a nice scumbag. He comes across very diplomatic to the point where it's just there's something off about him.
You know what he manages to portray really well, and it's partly down to how the actor does it. It's like, oh, hey, I don't want to put you in this difficult position. I don't want to impose upon you, but I'm a company man. I've got orders. I'm just having to do what I have to do. That's what he comes across. It's like he's personally on her side, but professionally like manipulating her. Obviously,
he'll stab someone in the back figuratively and literally with just a neutral expression on his face, and that's what he does he gaslights Ripley when he says, Ripley, you'd be smarter than this. He's just very gentle with it.
You cannot talk to a woman like he talks to Ripley today.
It's like telling her to calm down. But I like the casual flex that he's able to do as well, where he's like talking about her psychiatric report and how he's read it, and it's like you really shouldn't have access to that kind of thing. But he does, obviously, because he works for the company and he knows exactly what she's struggling with.
Also, like, something that, like, I guess none of us can really appreciate because we weren't alive. Or, I mean, well, Drinker, you say you were like 3 when the film came out or whatever. But, none of us saw the film in the cinema. We weren't like experienced in movies and actors when the film came out. apparently Paul Reiser, who played Burke, he was known for doing like TV comedy. Like this was completely out of he was cast very much against type, which was probably, I mean, presumably that was deliberate by Cameron or whoever it was that cast him, because they wanted to throw the audience off. And there are some bits in like the first half of the movie where he's not quite comic relief, but he is a bit goofy and out of place, which I think the fact that they cast a comedy actor to do that helps to misdirect you a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. What's interesting is like when you see him interacting with the Marines early on, they almost warm to him more than they do Gorman, which is kind of an interesting one. They so fucking dislike that guy. He's just the snooty officer type that's never actually been on a proper mission before, and they seem to have like, I don't know, they cut Burke a bit more slack than they do him, which is weird. But again, it's how he's able to worm his way into people's trust.
I'm kind of curious about this because, we're talking about the corporation and, Burke's character, which I'm excited to talk about that later because, man, does he go through a crazy ride that I never saw coming watching this for the first time. So that was a big breakthrough when that was really revealed. But I'm kind of wondering what you guys think. Do you think that the corporation is evil, or do you think it's like just representative of like corporate indifference? Because when I was watching this, I just kept getting the feeling that James Cameron was kind of like, kind of pushing the audience to look down on corporations. Like, I'm so sick of like, modern James Cameron. He's kind of, he's anti, what is it? He's kind of like anti-war. He's, anti, what is it? He's anti like colonialism, it's just, I felt like this was sort of like back in the day, his sort of jab at like corporations and big business, because I think big business does good things for people too. And it's kind of, I think there's definitely a negative side to it, but I don't know. I get kind of tired of seeing that side of the story.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way, right? One of the aspects of what Weyland-Yutani does is terraforming planets in order to colonize them and settle them, right? So you could probably make the argument that that's an objectively good thing. But like, I think the overarching theme of Alien and Aliens, right, when it comes to the big corporation, is that it's just seen as this cold, uncaring, purely clinical bureaucracy, this machine that just serves its own ends. It's not evil in the sense that it doesn't have malice towards people. I'm sure it would rather that, the ideal scenario for them from the first Alien would be that the Nostromo crew brings back a sample of the Xenomorph and no one gets killed and the ship doesn't get destroyed, because that would hurt their profit margin. They don't want innocent people to get killed. They just don't care that much, and they would consider them acceptable casualties to get something far more valuable, which in this case would be the Xenomorph. And so, yeah, I always saw it as just like a critique of the cold indifference of big corporations, rather than them being evil, mustache twirling villains or anything like that.
And I see a parallel when it comes to how, because someone might point out how James Cameron treated his crew as him being like an asshole to them. He's like, well, he's criticizing the corporations and how they treat people. What about him? I think there's a difference here in that, and let's take the moment when Ripley corrects Hudson for freaking out, right? She says, I'm sick of your bullshit. But, and this is also a parallel to like, how boss bays behave in the future, right? As today. But she corrects him, but then encourages him to do what needs to be done. Yeah. So it's like that James Cameron was hard on people, but wasn't indifferent to them as human beings, So he cared, but he wanted to get the right shit done.
Well, I mean, for sure. And Cameron was hard on people because he's an artistic person who's got a very clear artistic vision that he needs to be executed, and he needs all those people to cooperate. It's like it is a giant machine making a film. And so, yeah, it makes sense. I think with Ripley and the conversations she has with Hudson, and really like her leadership style, man, we could have a whole video just talking about Ripley and her like amazing development as a character, and like how interesting a character she is, and man, how much modern Hollywood writers could learn from her. But that's
I think they do, but they're missing like the more nuanced stuff.
I think what they see is like Ripley with the pulse rifle and the flamethrower just laying waste to everything around her and yelling at Hudson and just taking control without all of the connective tissue that links her from who she was in the very first Alien movie, just another member of the crew, gradually forced into a position of leadership that she doesn't necessarily want or aspire to, again, what she has to do in Aliens, where she is once again sidelined compared to all these Marines who very much are gung-ho and know their job, and she's just there to observe, really. But she's the voice of reason throughout all of it, pointing out dangerous situations that they're walking into, the flaws in their strategy, and being forced to take command because there's no one else. That is a very interesting character arc, and it's very interesting development for a character. But that's the stuff that gets missed out nowadays. They just want to fast track it straight to ultimate Ripley form, where she's just laying waste to everything in front of her. Not quite the same.
Yeah, because the way it would have been handled, with when she corrects Hudson, it would have been fuck off, and then she's going to go do it herself. Everything that she told him to do, Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that how because obviously Aliens is not the start of Ripley's story. She existed in Alien, but the character that we get in Aliens it feels like a natural continuation, even though really where she ends up by the end of Aliens is totally different kind of character to who we had in Alien. All of the stuff with the daughter and the motherhood, all of that, there's none of that in Alien. That was all created by James Cameron specifically for this film, which means that he essentially took a pre-existing character who was very much like a beloved character just from the first movie, and boldly took her in I don't want to say a totally different direction, but a natural evolution of where she already was.
Yeah, I think so.
Man. Cool. Nice, man. It's random. Random. It's I love when random talks, because it's like this beautiful maze of knowledge, and I'm just progressing right through. It's awesome. Nice, random.
Hey, before we move on from Burke, there is a question that I have, and I liked your explanation that you gave about Sigourney's Ripley's motivation to get back onto the moon, which I did a little research and found that it's not a planet. Apparently, it's a moon. LV-426.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but the question that I have that didn't feel as convincing to me was, why does Burke want her so bad to go back as an advisor? What knowledge does she have that is so critical for her to get back there for his interest, right? Otherwise, because she ends up being a thorn in his paw.
Well, yeah, but I guess he doesn't know that she's going to cause problems for him in that way, and I think he probably just sees her as being giving them a greater chance of success. If she's the only living human who's had direct contact with the Xenomorph, and you're going in on a mission to potentially combat these things, and from his perspective, try to secure samples of them that he can take back, yeah, you're going to want her there, if for nothing else than to just ask her questions about how they behave and what they can expect. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, Burke, this isn't, I believe, stated in the film. There might be a throwaway line in the extended version. I can't quite remember, but Burke has information on the alien creature. He has access to the flight recorder from the Nostromo. Not the flight, because that doesn't appear until Alien Isolation, which is the video game that comes in between the two. But he has access to any data that was on the shuttle that Ripley was found in, and logically you would have to assume that would have a black box of some kind that would then corroborate her story, because it's stated that the flight recorder corroborated some parts of her story, which means Burke has access to that. So he's going to know certain bits of information. He's going to know what she has claimed. But yeah, I think that her being the only person who has ever seen one of these things and lived is reason enough for him to want to take her with him. Because essentially she knows what they're looking for. She just doesn't want them to bring it back. She wants them to wipe them out.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is Burke would know that she's a fighter and a survivor, and that could mean some kind of sabotage to his motivation.
Theoretically, but then he's
it's a
also
risk,
going
is what
in
I'm
with,
saying.
Oh, it's a risk, sure, but would Burke believe it to be a risk if he's got 25 Marines on his side? That's the thing. I can see Burke not considering Ripley to be a serious threat. He just wants to have her knowledge, in close proximity.
Yeah. And it's for what he knows, she's not a fighter. Like necessarily, she survived the Nostromo, but she's not a fighter in the same sense that the Marines are. And as Randall explained, that she's not a direct threat to him from his perspective.
Man.
One thing I will say, though, which much as it pains me because this is one of my favorite movies, is there is essentially a plot hole. Unless one of you guys has an answer to this. So this wasn't sort of canonically resolved until the video game Alien Isolation. So the derelict ship with the space jockey.
With this.
Yeah, so it's sending out a distress beacon, which the Nostromo picks up, and that's why it gets rerouted. That distress beacon would still be going off. There is no indication that they switched it off. They didn't blow up the ship. They didn't do anything to the beacon, which means that when the colonists go to LV-426, there's going to be a distress beacon around the corner pinging off saying, hey, come and help us or whatever. Alien Isolation fixes the problem because it says that there's a second ship that goes to visit the derelict and they switch it off because they don't want anyone else to find it.
I've heard an explanation that there was seismic activity on the planet in the interim, and it damaged the ship. It damaged the space jockey ship and destroyed the beacon. That's what I've heard. Because apparently, when you see the extended cut and you watch them approaching the derelict, the outer hull is all cracked and damaged and stuff in a way that it wasn't in the original Alien. So that was my understanding of it. It's a bit of a plot hole, or at least it's a contrivance. But for me, it doesn't ruin the movie. It's one of those things. It
absolutely doesn't. No. Because the fact is, like, if this was a movie that took place immediately after Alien, then we would have no wiggle room. This is 57 years later. A lot can happen in 57 years. I mean, the thing is, where would they slot in an explanation for that in the film?
I do feel like even if the say the beacon was damaged and it wasn't broadcasting, if you're going to colonize a planet, you would probably do all kinds of like satellite surveys of the area and stuff, and you would probably just spot it. Like, if nothing else, like it's this gigantic derelict ship, but they somehow were just completely oblivious to it.
Well, when the signal, 57 years is like, it's hard to imagine a piece of technology lasting that long, like flashing, alarming for 57 years straight. That's
in the first Alien, it's almost implied that ship's been there for thousands of years, just lying. Derelict, because the space jockey that's there is I think that Dallas describes it as being fossilized almost, so then you're getting into like millions of years territory.
And you said space jockey, you're talking about the giant alien dude that was like the pilot?
Yes.
Okay, nice. Yeah,
he's referred to as the space jockey.
Engineers.
Yes, the engineers, definitely. That's exactly what Ridley Scott had in mind.
I don't know. I'm going to ask you guys as well, because I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. Like, would you rather just the space jockey be a mystery, like what its species is, what it was doing there, what the meaning of its ship was? Or would you rather have a really like bullshitty explanation force fed to you? Really like pretentious meaning of life, where did we all come from kind of question, but then not answer it? I'm just putting that out there because
I like the mystery. I wish we didn't have answers to everything. That would be so great. Star Wars would be in a much better place if that was the case.
Brawler, did you see Prometheus?
And Lord of the Rings? No.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things that Ridley Scott was thinking of doing, and one of the things he did not do, which was utterly ridiculous, involving Jesus Christ, actually, and engineers. It's another story. But I think I do err on the side of mystery, in that they still could have made Prometheus, but still kept that mystery without being confusing as well, because Prometheus does get muddled in terms of its rules. What the hell does that black ink do? Oh, it does everything.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It's an evil thing that transforms, this thing into that, this person into a monster, yada yada. So, yeah, I think the movie is very beautiful. This goes back to what we were talking about with Ridley Scott being a masterful visual, storyteller. But when it comes to him making decisions about character, you have the fucking idiots going Gucci Gucci goo to the alien snake. It's just so absurd. And he's the one that is the last, doorway of approval that it goes through, and he approved that. That's ridiculous. But again, visually speaking, like the environment, the score is awesome in Prometheus. But yeah, there's a lot going against it, and aforementioned. But yeah.
I think of all the sequels, I'm most interested in that one for some reason. From just what I've heard about it, it sounds like I should definitely not watch it though.
It's a wacky movie. I'd like to rewatch it because again, I remember liking definitely chunks of it, but there's a lot in it that's just really dumb. I guess I'd give it points for trying something new, but the thing is, if it's awful, then it shouldn't get points for trying something new. Which essentially, that's my answer to your question, Drinker. Is I like the idea of a mystery, but if Prometheus had been really good, then I wouldn't hold the fact that it solved a mystery unnecessarily against it. Right. I think that there are ways you could explain it without ruining Alien.
Yeah, and Aliens actually does it the right way to connect it back to Aliens, in that it expands the world building to where we get to see the alien queen, That expands it to the point where it's no longer a mystery, and it's not one single alien from the first. Now we have a host and an army of them, and then it's operating the same way as like a beehive or a bee colony, and that's interesting.
Again, that was an addition of Cameron's in terms of how the aliens function, because I don't know if you've ever seen the deleted scenes from the first Alien, but there was a scene where Ripley stumbles upon Dallas and Brett when they've been captured by the alien, and they're basically slowly morphing into eggs. So like they're now part of the alien's reproductive cycle. Obviously a completely different approach to what Cameron did, where it's like, no, we're going to do it like ants, where there's a queen and all that sort of thing, that she's the one who lays eggs. But I don't know, I almost like Ridley's version more because it's so otherworldly and so weird and disturbing. The alien queen is at least something you can understand more easily. It's like a final boss in a video game, essentially.
Yeah,
it's way bigger and tougher than the others.
Wait, so the dead victim turns into an egg?
It's kind of used as a food source for the egg, and kind of turned into the next. That's how it would reproduce. Was the original idea?
Because I think Brett is dead, but Dallas is still kind of alive and half turned into an egg, and he's like begging Ripley to kill him. So it's really horrifying to watch.
Yikes. Yeah, it's been a pretty sight.
It's an interesting one because like in execution, I would take the alien queen like any day. Because I agree with you, Drinker, like the whole it's a lot more alien for it to be doing this thing that you can't even really understand what it's doing than for it to be like it's like bees, and then for them to say it's like bees in the movie. That kind of ruins a little bit of the mystique of it. But specifically, the problem I have with that scene in the extended scene in Alien is where it's placed. It's right in the middle of, the ship's going to explode. You have 15 minutes to get off. And then she spends 4 minutes killing someone who's going to die in 5 minutes anyway. I think that scene, had it been placed differently, then fine. But you've got to remove it from, to be specific, you've got to not add it back in to to Alien. I don't like how that scene is used, but I like the idea.
Well, that's something like this is a question I have because I haven't seen, any of the other Aliens movies. I've only seen these two. So, like all the aliens in like Aliens, are they functioning on their own? Like, are they thinking for themselves, or is the queen doing all the thinking for them?
I think there's a bit of both in that she can direct them when she's in proximity to them, at least. It's kind of left up to the viewer's imagination if they've got some kind of overarching plan. They obviously have problem-solving ability in that, like, they try their direct assault, particularly in the extended cut where they go up against the sentry guns. It drives them back because they take heavy losses. And so they come up with a new solution where they come in through the roof panels, which no one anticipated. So it's like they've got this degree of problem-solving intelligence. How much they were communicating with each other and forming a plan, it's debatable because you don't really see it directly. You're just kind of left to surmise, I guess. But the queen can obviously order them around when she's around, but when she's near them, because there's a point where Ripley threatens her with the flamethrower or threatens her eggs, and she kind of looks at the various drones around them and they just back off. So it's like she's obviously got some way of telling them what to do.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I'll ask more about that towards the end, because I think that's going to make for an interesting conversation. I was wondering if we could talk about the, one of the most exciting scenes in the whole movie, of course, is when, the Marines, of course, they eventually land on LV-426, and they have their first engagement with the aliens in the hive. I was wondering, what did you guys think about this sequence? What do you think? Why do you think it stood out, and like what was important about this scene?
It is a superb piece of tension building, followed by like absolute batshit insane action. Again, just perfectly scored, perfectly paced. You can. What's great as well is you can really keep track of the various characters, because you come to know them at this point. You know who Hicks and Hudson and Vasquez are, and Drake, and watching various very important characters get picked off during that sequence is super interesting as well. The fact that what's his name, Apone, who's the leader of the squad, and he's very much the glue that holds them together. He is the authoritative, commanding sergeant, the guy who you can rely on. He gets killed off pretty quickly in that confrontation, and without him, the rest kind of devolve into chaos. And it's interesting how the whole thing just falls apart, and it's a great descent into madness and destruction and death, basically, because they go into the hive super confident, feeling like they're all tooled up with their cutting edge weaponry. They got all the firepower they could ever need. They think they can take on anything. They find out very quickly, because Ripley warns them, that they can't use their pulse rifles in there, even though some of them just kind of circumvent that rule anyway, because they're not going to take that shit. They encounter the humans, the colonists that have been captured by the aliens, and you get that real horrifying sequence of like the woman who's pinned against the wall and the chest burster comes out of her. They flame the alien, so like there's brief let up in the horror, and then then you get the sequence of the aliens all come out of the walls, like, and you realize to some extent they've walked right past these fucking things and didn't even see them because they were just motionless. I think that is just superb. And then then it's just absolute chaos until Ripley comes in and has to rescue them. I don't know, I can't fault it as an action sequence.
It's interesting because it's similar to what like this is the first big action set piece, and then the tension doesn't really hold up for the remaining like hour and a half of the movie. And like the last hour of the film in particular, I think is like absolutely perfect in terms of how it ramps up the tension. And it's pretty much exactly the same as what Cameron does here. Is he puts them in a difficult situation that they know is difficult. Then it gets harder, and then some new piece of information comes in that changes it and makes it like, what? No, that can't be right. And then it gets even harder again. And like specifically, they're looking for the colonists. They can't find them. And then they find them all in one location. And then while they're on the way, they have the discussion about, wait a minute, are they under the cooling towers? That means you can't fire your guns. I need you to collect rounds from everyone, but we're still going in. Like, what do you mean we're going in? Like, but then I guess they don't have a choice, because they do still have weapons that will work. They've got like, I believe they can use their pistols, and they've got flamethrowers as well that they can use. Then you have the scene with the chest burster, and then immediately, oh shit, we've got movement. Where? Well, it's kind of everywhere. And they realize that they are literally surrounded there, or it's not like, oh, it's right in front of us. No, they're everywhere. They are inside the nest. And then bang, they just get hit. It's so well done. Also, I think important to mention that you don't really see any aliens here. You see a couple of people get grabbed right at the start, but after all hell breaks loose, you see, like, we're talking split-second shots of the alien creatures themselves until the very end, when like Drake gets killed and Hicks shoots it with the shotgun. You basically just don't see the aliens. You're seeing it largely through like the POV shots, the helmet cams, which do a really good job of, I mean, for one, it conceals the budget that the movie was made on, which is still really impressive that he managed to do this. And two, it also lets you kind of see it through the eyes of, Ripley, Gorman, Burke, and I guess Newt by that point, who are sat in the APC and just watching the Marines slowly start flatlining because they can't see what's going on. It is so well done.
Yep. I think as well, there's great character moments woven into the midst of all this horror and action as well. Like watching Burke Gorman lose control of the situation. He doesn't really know how to manage the Marines. And the moment, they lose some of their key personnel, especially A. Pone, he's lost. He doesn't know what to do. And like, that's really rock bottom for him as a character. But then, as you find out later, he gradually does redeem himself to a degree later on in the movie. But like, that's the really us realizing this guy cannot handle a tense or a difficult situation like this. But then you have other characters like Vasquez and Drake who, even though they've been told to like surrender their ammunition, she's got some hidden away that they're able to use, and like they just absolutely let rip because that's the kind of characters they are. They don't follow the rules, and they will 100% just lay waste to their surroundings rather than just get picked off by these fucking creatures. And so it's telling you things about the characters all the time, in addition to giving you a really tense, horrific, and then action-packed sequence.
I'm glad you brought up Gorman, because that was sort of like, that was the highlight for this whole sequence for me. I loved the theatrics of it all. And you make a good point, Random. Like, you really don't see like any aliens really appear. You see just little inklings of them. But I loved seeing Gorman just kind of fall apart. And I think there's something about, I love reactionary emotion. You know what I mean? People reacting to something tragic, kind of the subtleties. I think that's something that I've grown to love about Sigourney Weaver's character Ripley in this is, just the small little ways that she reacts to what people say around her, what's happening to somebody, what's happening to herself, even just the little things. I think that helps me to appreciate a character as a real person. And this, watching him fall apart, it's kind of a lesson, it's a reminder, a wake-up call to all of us that, that would probably happen to us. And none of these guys, none of them have had contact with aliens before this, to my recollection. And I can't even imagine how horrifying, tragic, and strange this whole experience would be, watching, a chest burster come out of a poor woman while she's cemented into a strangely alien wall. And then, you're crowded around by these giant alien creatures, and you've never seen anything like that. You've probably never heard anything alien or monster-like in this universe before.
Well, isn't it interesting to watch Ripley's reaction during that scene when the chest burster comes out of the colonist, and you see her clutch her own chest, like, because it's harkening back to all those nightmares that she's had. And like, it's those moments of, oh, there's real vulnerability and real trauma to this character. And it's all on display if you care to look for it. And, then when she assumes control, again, it's not because she wants to, it's because she like literally grabs Gorman by his uniform and she's like, do something. Yeah. And he's got nothing. The guy's completely like lost control. And so she's like, fuck. And so she just takes the command of the APC and drives it straight in because there's literally no one else who can do it apart from her. And again, I think that's just a great aspect of Ripley's character. She doesn't want control of this situation. She does it because there is no alternative.
Yeah. And also, she's the only person there who has seen what these creatures are capable of, and now she knows how many of them there are.
Yes.
Or, she knows that there's lots. Just briefly for clarity, the Marines have definitely come across alien creatures before, but they have also definitely not come across these alien creatures before.
Yep. Okay.
Hudson. Because it's another bug hunt. Like, they have dealt with quote unquote bugs before. They've never dealt with anything quite like this, though. I think that's fair to say.
I looked into the bug hunt because I was listening to some analysis on aliens earlier, and someone clarified or at least described the bug hunt as like a term which classifies like sniping or like firing upon somebody in distance instead of being close proximity. So I guess that's why I thought that was the case. But I always thought it surprised me that, the Xenomorph, I thought like my initial impression was that this was the first alien life form humanity has ever seen, even though they've obviously conquered space. I'm like, how is that possible? So,
because I think Gorman's the one who uses the term xenomorph, and I think it's just a catch-all term for any like alien organism that they haven't quite identified yet. That seems to be how it's done, because the moment he says it, that's when they roll their eyes and they're like, it's another bug hunt. So I don't know if that just means like, well, that's their catch-all term for any sort of alien creature that isn't like a humanoid, or, and I don't know if this is just me headcanoning it here, that they've been sent out on other missions like this to look for xenomorphs, but they've been unsuccessful. You know, the company has sent them on missions to try and find more samples of these things, and they just haven't found anything. I'm not sure how to interpret it.
I mean, the xenomorph bug, like I have issues with the way that the xenomorph thing has kind of become a thing. Like I personally just don't refer to the alien creature as the xenomorph, even though that's what pop culture calls it. Because in the context of the film, Gorman isn't saying it's the xenomorph, which is the one that comes out of the facehugger and goes into the, they don't know what this thing is. That's kind of the point. And when he says it's a xenomorph, that literally translates to like unknown creature, unknown shape is what it means. And the reason why that line exists is to like draw a contrast between Gorman and the grunts, because he's saying, "Oh, gentlemen, we're going to go and battle the xenomorph that may or may not be there," and they're like, "Well, okay, I'll translate that into Marine speak. It's a bug hunt." So I like the line. I don't like that the creature has now just become colloquially known as the xenomorph.
That's weird. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was like a branch general term for aliens.
There's a lot of alien lore.
It goes deep, right? How many alien movies are there?
Too many.
The 4 mainline ones, the 2 AVP ones, the 2 Ridley Scott Prometheus-y ones. There is Romulus, and then there is Alien Earth.
Wow. Yikes.
So there's a lot at this point.
And there's going to be a Romulus too.
Yeah, and most of them are garbage.
Yes.
Which one's with the actress Kaylee Spaney? Is that Romulus or is that
Romulus?
Oh, that's Romulus. Yeah. Okay, nice.
You got a crush on her, brother?
Yeah, I did it.
I heard it in your tone.
Oh,
yeah.
Crap! Don't bring it up, man. Don't bring it up. That's funny. All right, an interesting question I have for you guys. I'm wondering, what do you think would have happened if Gorman extracted the Marines before shit hit the fan? Like, they saw that this was a hot zone. And he's like, okay, get out. Let's reassess the situation and think about a better alternative. What do you think would have happened?
Well, they might have gone back in with flamethrowers, but then I think Ripley would have warned them against it. I don't know. Maybe Burke would have been content to get back to Earth with the facehugger samples, because he did have live ones that they could use. So that might be enough for him to say, like, mission complete. And then we'll send in, I don't know, fucking... either nuke the site from orbit, or we'll send in even more Marines to wipe out the nest. But clearly the resources they had were not going to be sufficient for the task at hand.
The question is, how quickly would they do it? Because it depends on when did Gorman turn them around? Because essentially while all of this was going on, there was an alien outside of the nest which killed Pharaoh on the dropship. If that still happens, then Gorman can evacuate everyone. They're still in the same problem. It's just that there's more of them alive. They're not able to get back onto the Sulaco if they don't have the dropship, unless they remote pilot it, which is what they end up doing. So they would be in a better situation, but the deciding factor is whether or not they have the dropship still.
Man, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, the alien, really wrecked their escape.
That was a really unfortunate chain of events that happens in this movie.
Yes.
The alien takes out Pharaoh, which kills their pilot. The dropship then crashes on the fucking APC and then barrels straight into the atmosphere processor and sets that on a path to a chain reaction that's going to blow it up. So, yeah, that one xenomorph did a lot of fucking damage to their plans.
Yeah. Jeez.
I did have a question about how the hell did the alien get on that aircraft? Just... nicely. Wasn't there another guy on there? And then they took him out? Yeah.
So I think it got on when he was I don't know where he was. He was taking
a dump or something.
Yeah. But the rear cargo ramp was open, and so it could easily get in that way, I guess.
Okay, so I missed that detail. That's okay. There we go.
Yeah, because he's getting back on the ship. He finds goo, and then it's implied that he dies off screen because the alien is already on the ship by that point.
Is there a difference with the extended cut and the theatrical? Do they put in more details?
Not with that sequence,
okay.
No.
All right.
There is apparently a deleted scene where you get to see Pharaoh's death. You get to see it in more detail, because in the final version you just kind of see blood splattering across the cockpit canopy. I think there is a scene that they shot where it grabs her and fucking murders her that way, but I guess it wasn't necessary to show. I think it's better this way.
Yeah, I think it's effective. Yeah, because it's not gratuitous, and it's also quick, because that's not where the focus of the drama is. The focus of the drama is on Ripley getting everyone out of the nest, and then the dropship being destroyed is about to hit them. We don't need to see like a minute of Pharaoh trying to defend herself against the alien.
Yeah.
Right. And we would have a kind of a Prometheus scene essentially with the cargo. You have the cargo bay in Prometheus featured a lot in that movie, where there's actually an attack sequence in there. I wouldn't want that either. It's just that little detail. I think, it's not. I missed that. So yeah.
Something I want to mention as well is it's pretty amazing that like Alien ended up as good as it is at the length that it was, because what we know as the director's cut is 2 hours 35. That was the original cut of the film that James Cameron submitted to Fox. And they were like, yeah, we really need this to be under 2 hours. They wanted him to cut out 35 minutes from his movie.
Oof.
So he went back in and he was able to remove I think it was about 17 minutes, something like that. And he turned in like the theatrical cut, it was the one that ended up being released theatrically. It's just over 2 hours and 15 minutes. And Fox was like, yeah, we're going to need you to take out another 15, 16 minutes out of this movie. And he looked at it again and he was like, I can't do that, or the movie will not make sense, because at 2 hours and 16 minutes, it is such a tight movie. Every scene serves a purpose and you can't remove anything. Yeah. So he basically hardballed them and said, I can't do that. So, I mean, you do you. Like, if you want to cut, because he didn't have final cut. He basically told them, if you want to cut up my movie, like, I'll hate you forever, but I guess you can do that if you want to ruin it. And they chose not to, thankfully. If they had been like, no, Mr. Cameron, we own this movie, you've got to remove another 15 minutes. Where the hell are you taking it from?
Yeah.
Man.
I honestly don't know.
I don't know why they would want it much shorter than that. I mean, 2 hours 16 isn't that bad.
It's because you can screen it more times in a day. It's literally that simple.
True.
Yeah.
I heard, what was it? I think I heard something a while ago that JJ, he cut a lot out of Rise of Skywalker for that reason, so that they could screen it more.
Well, that didn't help much, did it?
I was about to say, yeah.
Maybe
this is
movie. What could have happened here. Maybe Rise of Skywalker was a masterpiece, and they cut out too much. I don't think so.
Yeah.
No. Well, what do you guys think? So we were talking about Burke earlier, and I think Burke, he might be my favorite character in the whole film, just because, as you said, you just never could have imagined where he was going from the start. I liked, Drinker, how you mentioned how right off the bat he was sort of like a trusting figure. I think that makes a lot of sense thinking of him in that fashion, because I sort of trusted him right off the bat for some reason. I think there's just like a trusting factor to him. So I guess I just wanted to talk about like his downfall as a character. Well, why don't we get into his story? Because out of everybody, I think he has the craziest trajectory in the whole movie.
I think he's a victim of his own greed and ambition, because that's ultimately what the company breeds in people. It's like he's a mid-level executive. He's just another company man, but he desperately wants to rise to the highest levels, and he's going to do that by getting samples of the Xenomorph and bringing them back. So I get the impression he's kind of operating on his own initiative. I could be wrong on this one, random, but I never got the impression he was his plan to, like, say, infect Newt and Ripley with the facehuggers was like him obeying company orders. It was him improvising, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because he only makes that decision after Ripley's like, I know what you did and I'm going to nail you right to the wall. So he kind of sees that as a way to kill two birds with one stone by essentially shutting her up and also recovering a specimen.
Yeah. And so, in the early stages of the movie, he seems like this much more cooperative guy. Like I said earlier, he seems to be on Ripley's side. It's like, I'm trying to fight your corner, but you got to work with me here and give me what I need. And so you don't know really if you can trust him or not, but the actor does a good job of making him seem plausible. But the first hints really come when Ripley is talking to Bishop. Bishop's examining the dead facehuggers, and she orders him to destroy them because Ripley, as far as she knows, this mission is all about killing the Xenomorphs and destroying all evidence of them. That's when Bishop says, no, Mr. Burks told me that this stuff's all got to be taken back to Earth for analysis. And he was very specific about that. That starts to tell you that, he's got an ulterior motive here, and it's not in line with what he told her. And then that's what sets Ripley on course to find out the orders that he issued to the colonists to go out and investigate the derelict ship, which triggered the infection that spread to the whole colony. And as Random pointed out there, she confronts him about it. Probably shouldn't have, really. Again, it's Ripley maybe not thinking too clearly, because if she threatens to expose him, clearly he's going to do something in retaliation, because she just basically says, I'm going to fucking destroy your career, and then storms off.
We have to learn something from Godfather. Never let anyone know what you're thinking.
Nice call.
And like... when that plan fails, he's obviously been rumbled by the Marines. And, they are straight up willing to kill him. Like, they're not going to take him back.
Oh, I love that.
They're just like, no, we fucking waste this guy.
Yeah, I love how it's because really it's Hicks is kind of the character that is like the audience is meant to be sort of on side with. The other characters maybe do things and say things that you're meant to be like, oh, really? Like, okay. So there's a bit of contrast there. Yeah, exactly. He's meant to be the balanced one who's making the right decisions, and because that scene opens with Hudson, who is far less emotionally stable, and he's like, "I say we grease this rat fuck son of a bitch right now," and that's a totally in character thing for him to say. And then after they have the discussion, Hicks is just like, "Yeah, we waste him. He's done." And then it's Ripley who then steps in like, "No, we're not going to execute him." And then the aliens attack. It's so good. It's so well done.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny though, because like she really shouldn't want to take him back, because if she does, like the company's clearly going to bail him out, and he'll be 100% protected. So it's not like if in the alternate scenario, if they did take him back to Earth in handcuffs or whatever, like he would be a free man within 24 hours. Like he would not suffer any consequences because of this. But yeah, as it happens, the Xenomorphs intervene to help him out, so that's nice for him. Temporarily, at least.
Well, yeah. I was disappointed by, unless Brawler, you want to get to that specific moment of his passing, his tragic passing, right? I was disappointed because I wanted to see the alien inner mouth jaw just go right, bam, right in the center of his forehead.
There is a deleted scene.
Okay, that's what I was. There is. Okay, there you go.
There's a deleted scene where Ripley encounters him in the alien nest, much like with the first movie, and he's been impregnated with a chest burster. And yeah, he's going to die imminently, one way or the other. He's either going to get nuked or the thing's going to burst out of his chest and kill him. So that's the kind of that's the payoff for Burke. But I can see why they cut it, because it was going to hurt the pace too much.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
It's very similar to the egg scene in the first one, in terms of like it's a good idea, and I like that as a conclusion for his character, because essentially what happens is Burke is begging like, please kill me. Ripley doesn't. She basically hands him a grenade and is like, do it yourself. And in the theatrical and the director's cut version of the film, both versions, you can still see the explosion. There's an explosion that goes off, and it just looks like it's part of everything exploding. But one of the explosions in one of the shots was originally Burke exploding himself with the grenade, which is neat. So that's the only part of him that remains in that sequence.
Damn. Yeah. Wait, so he kind of goes out in like a sacrificial, like, savior way by blowing himself up?
No, because he's not saving anyone. He's just like killing himself before the chest burster gives him agonizing death. So
yikes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he would go anyway, because the whole facility is about to explode. But I think the way that they present the scene is that he knows it's about to come out of him, so he would rather blow himself up than wait for that to happen. But yeah, I like the idea, because I think it's appropriate that Ripley doesn't just give him the easiest way out by executing him. She's like, no, you need to grow some balls and do this yourself. Like, at least do that. And then he does.
Yeah.
Huh, that's fair. I have an interesting for instance, because I think there's so many fun theories that you could draft from this movie. There's like so many for instances. And like one of the ones I'm curious about that I was thinking about earlier was, so when Ripley and Newt, they survive that terrible facehugger attack, and she reveals like what she believes Burke's plan was, and it's pretty savage. I have it written here. Where is it? She was pretty much saying that once the facehugger impregnated both Ripley and Newt, it would be Burke's idea to freeze them and take them through processing, and that would pretty much go by without a second glance, because through the processing, I guess for whatever reason, they wouldn't be able to register that they have an alien embryo within themselves. And he would also deal with the remaining Marines by also freezing them. And I don't exactly know how he would go about getting them into that state as well for the return home, but they would be frozen, and he would what's the word? He would rig their machines so they would pretty much die, so he could tell the rest of the story. Do you think there's any way that this plan could have possibly worked? Because I really don't. I don't see how that could happen.
I think, yeah, it gets, when it gets to that level, it's a little bit fanciful in terms of his chances of success. Like, I don't know what level of access, say, Burke might have over the Sulaco's computer system. Maybe he could just program it to, shut down their cryo chambers while they're in stasis. It's possible. If he's a company man, he might have that level of influence. I'm not sure how he imagined that was going to work, but yeah, it seems like there was a lot of things that would have to go perfectly right for his plan to succeed. And it might just be that he was getting desperate.
There's a bit of wiggle room there, because he doesn't. This is all Ripley saying this was probably his plan. It doesn't necessarily mean that was his plan. So, if the facehuggers had done what they were supposed to do, then from the perspective of the Marines, they can hate Burke as much as they like. Their best and only chance of Ripley and Newt surviving is to get them back onto the Sulaco and get them frozen. That's which essentially means that, it essentially means that Burke doesn't necessarily have to kill the Marines by sabotaging their cryopods. Doing that would only mean that they can't tell on him for doing what he did, but everyone's going to know what he did anyway, because he's presenting two corpses with aliens, or bodies with aliens inside them. So I don't know if he was necessarily going to do that, and I don't know if he had to do that in order to succeed.
Wow.
So Emperor Goodwin's pointing out there, technically he could order Bishop to release him from the cryo chamber while the rest of them were asleep, and then sabotage them that way. Because Bishop being a Weyland-Yutani android, I guess he would be compelled to obey him.
Probably, yeah.
But is he allowed to harm other humans in that way?
I don't believe that's specified.
He can't directly harm them, no. But I don't know if if Burke could essentially just say, right, Bishop, go and leave the room for 15 minutes, would you? And just don't ask any questions about what I do. And then sabotage it that way. I don't know.
Well, because Bishop does say that, I guess, Bishop, we haven't even mentioned Bishop yet. He's so good in this movie. He says that it's impossible for him to harm, or by omission of action, allow to be harmed a human being, which, yes, sabotaging or letting Burke sabotage the freezers theoretically would go against that. But at the same time, he is an android, artificial person made of ones and zeros. If Burke has some kind of special access because he's a company man, then it doesn't matter what Bishop wants to do. He's a robot.
Yeah.
What do you guys? I don't think Burke's that smart to override all that stuff, but that's just me.
I don't know if he's smart in the sense of a computer programmer, but I think he's got levels of access because he is a company man, and so there's no telling what authority he has over androids, systems, computer, access to things. He could potentially do all manner of stuff.
Well, also, because if you look at the at Alien Special Order, I think it was 237. I can't remember the name. I think it was 237. That was the thing that was programmed into Mother and Ash, which was the secret protocol that they should follow if they ever find any such organism. Yes. Ash was a bit of a prick anyway, but if it had been Bishop on that ship, then we have to assume the same thing would have happened. Because in Aliens, they kind of cover it up by saying, oh, well, Ash just malfunctioned. Ash did malfunction, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that he was, crew expendable, return organism at all costs. That was the problem. So if that protocol got activated on Bishop, Bishop doesn't have a choice. It doesn't matter if he's a nice robot who wants to help people.
Yeah.
I love Bishop's character. I'm glad you brought him up, Random. I keep trying to find a way to weasel him in because, he's important and he does important things, but I don't think he doesn't really have a standout scene except when he's crawling through that tunnel. I love that.
He's doing an Andy Dufresne.
Iconic.
Oh, the iconic scene is just before that. It's the bit with the gun. So as he's
gives it
it's so good. It's just such a small moment, and there's no dialogue to even address it because you've got I believe it's Hudson, Vasquez, and Bishop, right? And so Bishop gets into the hole, and Hudson is about to like solder the thing back over the top, and Vasquez just hands him a gun because that's what you would do. It's like, here, you might need this. Bishop just kind of looks at it like, I don't understand what it is that you've just given me, and then just hands it to Gorman. It's so good. He can't even comprehend the idea of using a gun. It's brilliant.
What am I going to do with this?
Yeah. But they don't even draw attention to it. It's just this neat little character moment that's funny, but also totally appropriate for all of the characters.
No dialogue, just visual storytelling behavior.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Awesome. Was that a bit of an ad lib by Lance Henriksen? I feel like I saw something in the Aliens Expanded documentary where he talks about this, and he came up with it on the spot. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
I could totally believe it. Yeah. I'm just going to check the script now while you guys are talking and see what that scene says. Because I find it's always interesting when you look at scripts for like classic movies, because then you can see, what was on the page versus what we ended up getting, and there's always these little changes.
Yeah. While he's looking there, as people are pointing out in chat, the knife trick with Hudson is an iconic moment for Bishop.
Oh yeah,
in the early part of the movie. Hey Bishop, do the thing with the knife.
I bet you did that many times, didn't you, Drinker?
Yeah,
you ever try it?
Yeah. So many lost fingers as a result.
I remember people doing that with pens in school, and it's like, nah, I'm good, man. I don't need that risk.
I can tell you a behind the scenes story about that as well. Like Lance Henriksen knew he was going to be doing this scene, and so he wanted to practice it quite extensively because he wanted it to look good on screen. So he got his own set of knives because he wanted to have one that he knew exactly the size of the blade, the weight of it, and all that, so he could go as fast as possible and not hurt anyone. So he spent all that time practicing on it, and then flew into the UK so they could start filming. Brought the knives with him, and immediately got arrested by security at the airport because in the UK you can't just bring a whole bunch of fucking knives in and not get questioned about it. So he had to phone Gail Ann Hurd and be like, so I got some bad news. I'm under arrest. And I'm currently detained at the airport. What do I do? So she had to drive there and get him and explain the situation to the policeman there.
Poor lads.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's some dedication, though. I would not want to be playing around with that.
Yeah.
I've just double checked. So yeah, Drinker, you were totally right. The little bit with the gun was improvised on the day, and also his line where he says, just as it's being covered up, where he goes like, "Watch your fingers," their safety is his top priority, while he's being put in this the most claustrophobic place that you could possibly be put, and he's like, "Hey, watch your fingers." That's not in the script either.
That's great.
So it's brilliant. So good.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, what do you guys think would have happened if his plan did work? If Burke's plan worked, he was able to get the alien into wherever the home base was. I kind of wondered if it was on Earth or if it was maybe somewhere else that he wanted to take the specimen. But if this had happened, if he was able to get poor little Newt and Ripley probed or impregnated by the alien, they get back there, they get past all the security processing. What do you think that would have looked like?
Well, this is the first time that I realized when I saw this movie again, preparing for this, that the space station, Gateway Station, is actually above Earth. It's pretty closest so far in terms of chronology of the movies that we've been this close to Earth, So
yeah, I think what would have happened, he probably would have got quite a rapid promotion within the company.
Well, I mean, you don't think there would be like the alien would get loose and tear up the station? And
I mean, there's probably another movie that you could make where that exact same thing happens. You would have to assume the company would be super prepared for this eventuality now. They know what the xenomorphs are, they know their strengths and weaknesses, and they would take the utmost care in making sure that these samples were brought back safely and properly contained.
I love what you just said there, Drinker, is the opposite of what happens in Alien Earth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Let's dispatch our best retards to try and bring these home.
Oh my God!
Hope that everything works out okay. But yeah, I mean, it's fanciful beyond that. Like, I have no idea where it would ultimately lead, but you can assume like they would breed these things to, I guess, be some kind of like bioweapon that you could just drop onto planets, but then the planet would be uninhabitable pretty much after that because they're unstoppable, really.
I think
and then
they'll
sell them off to the highest bidder, like in the Jurassic World movies.
Yeah,
believable.
Gosh, I think they might be able to take advantage of like the hive mentality if they were able to discover that, and maybe have like central command all the different aliens. I think that'd be cool. But yeah, sounds like Alien Earth did not explore that properly.
The thing is, you would never convince me as well that like a bunch of xenomorphs that you can't control would be any more effective in warfare than a bunch of Colonial Marines with guns. Because as much as they're like off balance and they're usually on the back foot in this movie, like they do kill a shitload of the xenomorphs. Like they are effective in combat when they're properly used. It's just they're usually overwhelmed, and their best chances in the hive early on when they can't use their weapons properly, and most of them get killed.
Yeah, it's the same as the, I guess, the Jurassic World problem of let's use velociraptors in war for some reason. Like that is really dumb on its own, but like I guess the difference with the alien is that it isn't a creature; it's an infestation. You could, I can totally buy the idea of the alien creature being used as a biological weapon. I think that's a lot more plausible than a fucking dinosaur. But yeah.
I kind of wonder, like, in that scene, the shootout where the Marines get ambushed, they want to resort to flames. And I don't think throughout the whole movie, we really see like one alien get really scorched, except the baby. So do you guys know just how like, how resistant they are to that? Is it really that much of a lethal weapon against like a full scale xenomorph?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever made clear how effective it would be against a xenomorph drone or warrior. Obviously, it can damage the eggs, but they're meant to be quite delicate anyway. Since they have an exoskeleton and it's basically armor, it's like having bones on the outside instead of the inside of your body. I don't know how effective fire would be against them, really.
Yeah,
like because they seem to be quite resistant to like. Apparently, they can survive in the vacuum of space for quite a long time. So, I assume they're pretty resistant to like adverse temperatures. So I don't know.
Yeah, we know that they really don't like fire. We don't know how hot you'd have to make it for them to like actually sustain damage. If you were to just hold your finger on the trigger, how long is that going to take? I guess the closest example we get is when Ripley is fighting the Queen at the end, and she's got the little blowtorch, and she activates that while holding the alien Queen's head next to it. That goes on for a little bit, and it doesn't seem to do any damage, but it's all speculation. We can't know. What we do know is what happens when they get shot with the rounds that they have in the Alien universe, which they then use the exact same guns in Alien Earth, and the aliens are completely bulletproof in that, which is great to see.
Yikes. Great. Of course.
As people pointed out in chat as well, I hate to reference Alien 3, but like it can survive being submerged in molten lead, which I'm assuming is going to be, 1,000 degrees or something. I don't know how long true. Survive in that, but like
well, then there's your answer. There's no way that flames are really going to screw it up.
It's really crazy. Projectile weapons you need to kill these things.
Dang. Well, why don't we move on to the next portion of the story? Because I think, I think it's a little over halfway, maybe 60%, 65% of the way through the movie, we go through a really tough time where we lose a lot of characters. I like how I love how both Alien and Aliens, they both directors did such a great job at posing all these different characters very different from each other and making them likable and relatable. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, Drinker, even just through that one action scene, it was there was a lot of character building there. And, this whole movie, it's just more and more and more, and you can't get enough of these guys. And then, of course, when there's the alien ambush in the med lab, we lose a lot of guys. We lose, Bill Paxton, Hudson. We lose Vasquez and Gorman. And we also lose Burke. So I guess I was just kind of wondering, out of all these deaths, which one of these, like, kind of hit you the most?
Hands down. Hudson right there.
It's because I really love Hudson and Vasquez for different reasons. Like, I think they both go out like absolute bosses, but like Hudson is just so likable, and like the fact that he's gone through such a great character arc as well. You know, he's really just a minor background character in a lot of ways, but like he's got a complete character arc. He's this wannabe badass trying to give it all the tough talk at the beginning, loses his shit when things turn against them in the hive. Like he's obviously like it's an act and he's shit scared, but then pulls it all together and then finally goes out in an absolute like blaze of glory, like just screaming abuse at the aliens while he gets dragged down underneath the floor. What a boss. Like,
any chance I get, I'm gonna talk about how Bill Paxton was so fucking talented. He traversed from, you know, being this goofy side character, and then he gets this character where he has more dynamism to the role. Eventually in the 90s becoming a leading man in Twister. I mean, and then the tragedy that happened later on with, you know, him dying on the operating table. But damn, just did he have an awesome career? Just different, you know, phases to it. You know, it was awesome.
What happened to him? In the operating
attack,
yeah, he was having some heart operation. Yeah,
I will say as well, like Vasquez, I loved her final exchange with Gorman. You know, when
you asshole.
Like, yeah, they're getting pursued through the air vents, and she's still taking these aliens out. She even kills one point blank range with a pistol, and like gets disabled by it. Gorman goes back to save her. That's his little redemption arc, and then like fucks that up, and they're about to get overwhelmed. And then she's just like, "You always were an asshole."
Yeah, nice final words. Hey, I mean, he came there to help you. Like, give him some grace here.
I think that's her, in her own Vasquez sort of way. That's her way of making peace with him and being like, you know what, you tried, bro. I respect that.
She really hates him. Like, not in that scene specifically, but like prior to that, she absolutely hates him like more than anyone else. She didn't trust him originally, which is why she kept the bullets. And then she considered that his incompetence essentially got Drake killed, which is not inaccurate.
She wanted to beat him up when he was unconscious.
Yeah,
which I thought was great.
Yeah, get some punches in when he can't defend himself. You know, she was just that pissed off.
Keeps calling him a bendejo jerk off.
Yeah. But then, like when during their death scene, you know, you always were an asshole. It's almost like an endearing, like she has now accepted that. Yeah, you're an asshole, but thank you for being here with me. And I also need to mention as well that it's just so good that Gorman could have escaped, and he chose not to. He chose to go back and try to save the person who hated him the most. And I think specifically with like Gorman and Hudson in this sequence, the fact that characters like this who they're not that important to the plot. They're like they're B characters who are part of the team who have guns, essentially. But James Cameron managed to write them in such a way that they actually all have little mini arcs. They have a reason for being there, and they have some base level of development, which helps them feel like people who could exist, even though, especially in comparison with the characters in Alien, a lot of them are, you know, larger than life, a little bit quirky and goofy. You know, you've got Apone wakes up and the first fucking thing he does is put a cigar in his mouth. You know, little things like that. They're very much like larger than life, which was not the case in Alien. And I think if you didn't have these little humanizing moments and the character arcs that they each get, then these characters would feel essentially like cartoon characters that you're not meant to take seriously, but you really are meant to take them seriously. And I think it works so well.
Yeah, that's something like my family and we noticed, which we thought was almost a little ridiculous with the Marines, because I watched Aliens with all of them yesterday or whenever I did, and we were kind of like, you know, these Marines, they weren't, you know, they're ball busters, and I imagine that's the case normally, but they were kind of, I don't know, they seemed really immature, and you know, I think something I appreciated about the scene that we mentioned earlier when they first come into contact with the aliens was like, oh shit, I gotta wake up. This is bigger than anything I've ever done. But that's always something I was like, you know, why are they so immature? Like when they were being debriefed on what the mission was, I mean, they weren't taking it seriously at all. And I don't know, for that, it seemed a little comical and unlikely to me.
I think they were just trying to emphasize the cockiness of them and their overconfidence. And you know, the fact that they are young, like most of them, like they don't necessarily look it, but they're meant to be like relatively young. Like Marine grunts will be in their like mid-20s at most, and so they are just like full of energy and full of overconfidence, and it manifests as like taking the piss out of each other, not really paying that much attention during briefings because they've got no time for it. They just want to get into a bit of action, and like Hudson was, just they're giving it all the talk, like they're going to go in and kick ass, because it's how they psych themselves up for another mission. But obviously, they end up in something very different in the course of this film.
Also, that scene is part of the reason why they're acting in that way is because they don't know, they don't trust, and they don't like Gorman. They've never met him before. They've all been working together. Gorman is a new addition. And he's trying to be like, yes, gentlemen, I'm in charge now. And they're just like, no, fuck off. We don't know you.
And you can't remember their names.
Yeah, exactly. He has no idea who they are. He's not a part of the team. He hasn't sort of earned their respect. And he doesn't until his last moments with Vasquez.
I think it's funny how like you look at the characters like before they were outfitted in like their armor and their marine outfits, they looked like totally different people. Like Bill Paxton's character, he looked kind of like, I don't know, dinky, small, not much going for him at all, no substance. And then when he's got their armor on, he's a pretty big, brooding character. I didn't know who it was. It was like it took my third viewing to realize that was him at the very beginning, mouthing off.
Well, they've got a lot of body armor and equipment on and stuff, and it looks, to their credit of the production designers and stuff, it looks very practical and pretty tough and hard wearing, and it bulks them out quite considerably, which is all to the good. But this was a different time, I guess, in filmmaking. Like if this movie was made now, I think they would all have bodies like professional bodybuilders. They would be chiseled to within an inch of their lives, but the actors would still act like fucking wimps. They wouldn't be able to convey the toughness that you get in these characters. And I think that's the trade-off almost. Like they don't always have to be built like these enormous powerhouses to still be imposing and to look tough and to act tough.
Drinker, I'm not so sure about that. I get a sneaking suspicion they might have cast Timothy Chalamet as Hicks.
Who knows?
Oh, imagine that. Please no. He's not a thing. Don't make him a thing. I think like of all these deaths, the Vasquez death really hit me. I think it hit me because, that's a thought, such a scary thought and idea that, you are certain in 3 seconds that you're going to be dead. And I just can't even imagine all the different thoughts and feelings that go in that moment. And like you said, although she was like mouthing off and cursing at him, it was a touching moment where you see two people just embrace each other for their final breath. And that really stood out to me. It really, I don't know. It's such a strong impression. And it's a thought and a concept that none of us want to think about ever, but it should be raised that, our days are numbered. You never know. And it hits. That hit me hard.
And it does all that, right? It gets you thinking about all these different things with pretty minimal dialogue. It's all left up to you to surmise how the character's feeling because it's what you're seeing on screen. You can picture yourself in that situation to a degree. That's again the mark of some good direction right there.
Yeah, it's not telling you what to think, too, right?
Yeah, because it's like we don't get some big epic speech from her, like, "Oh my god, I had so much to live for. I thought I was going to make it out with you guys, and I'm so sad. I tried my best.
Tell my story.
Yeah,
tell my story.
Avenge me."
No. Yeah. You make a good point now thinking about it. There isn't really any like epic speech moments the whole time.
Yeah, no speechifying.
No, that's for the best. There's a time for it.
That's part of why the pacing in the movie is so good. Is there are moments of downtime, like the discussion between the I think there's two scenes where you have Ripley and Newt, like the bonding scenes. One of them is longer in the director's cut, but like apart from that, essentially everything is how do we deal with this ridiculous problem that we're now stuck in, and then them dealing with the problem that they're now stuck in. So yeah, I mean, the way that it just amps up the tension and everything just gets worse and worse and worse and worse throughout the movie after the nest scene. It's done so well. You just don't get movies done like this anymore. It's always like maybe they'll have one thing where like, oh, we landed on a planet and the atmosphere processing plant's going to blow up. What do we do? No, this has that and about 20 other things that are all going to happen. Like you have to get out of here, but you can't. And yeah.
And because you've essentially got there's three big set piece battles in the course of this movie, right? There's the nest assault where they get ambushed, and then the escape from there. Then there's the battle in not med lab, the operations room, basically, where Hudson, Vasquez, and Gorman all get killed. And then you've got the final battle between Ripley and the alien queen. So you've got three. But once you get past that battle in the control room, the movie just does not let up then, because there is a bit of a lull in between those first two battles, where it's really just them grappling with their situation and trying to figure out a way to get off the planet. But once you get past that, the movie just does not stop. Then it's like this mad rush to escape the place before the atmosphere processor goes critical. Newt gets kidnapped by the aliens. Ripley escapes with Hicks. He gets injured, so he's now out of action, and she's now got to go after Newt. And that's her finally going fully on the offensive for the first time in the movie, because up until now she's been reacting to everything and just doing what was best at the time, desperately trying to get them out of situations. Now she's making this conscious decision to go after someone she cares about and take the fight to the aliens. And again, you get one of the greatest gearing up sequences in any movie, where she's got the flamethrower, she's got the pulse rifle, she's got the grenades, the spare ammo, everything. It's
doesn't she tape that shit together?
Yes.
It's cool.
Yeah,
that's great. Huh.
The also part of why that works is because they established earlier that resources are not infinite. This is not, I'll grab my gun that has infinite ammo, or I have we're not going to acknowledge reloading or anything like that, or well, we have a bunch of clips and she just has enough. No, it's made very clear that she has 50 rounds, half a tank of fuel, and 6 grenades. It's made explicit. I can't remember the numbers, and that just means that at a point, if there comes a time when she's up against something that she can't, fire a bullet into, she is just going to die if there are too many. So that just it sets up the tension for that sequence perfectly.
Yeah, I love it at the end of the Queen, it's not the end of the final battle, but it's the lull where she thinks that she's done with the Queen, the alien Queen, and she's literally backed up against the wall, nowhere else she could go. She's got Newt in her arms, and she's all out of ammo. It really hit. I felt it just seems like there's obvious things that a story would tell you, or a story would make happen, because of course she's going to escape, of course she's not going to die. But I think James Cameron, he does such a masterful job at crafting a scenario and the lead up to it in a fashion where you can't even trust that. You can't believe that's what's going to happen, because I think he has such a great unpredictable nature to him in building up scenes for you not to realize where it's actually going to go.
Well, I don't know if you noticed as well, she's kind of climbing over the railings with Newt, and I think it's easy to surmise that she's going to throw them off rather than let the Queen take them or whatever, which again it's brutal stuff, but you can see Ripley making a decision like that just out of mercy almost. And then obviously you get the appearance of the ship. Bishop had obviously had to take off because the platform was too dangerous, and you get this great rescue sequence. Again, it's superbly staged, superbly paced. And I do love the sequence just before that when Ripley's gotten Newt, she's rescued her. They're fleeing from the scene, not realizing they've run straight into the egg chamber where the Queen is. And you get that great tracking shot where you see the gigantic egg sack. The camera pans across. Then you start to see the pieces of the Queen's carapace until eventually you see the gigantic head that's just lowered like that. And it's backlit and everything. It's like this horrifying monster, just and then when you think they're going to back out of there, because they seem to have reached an understanding,
an agreement.
Ripley threatens it with the flamethrower, and it's it tells the drones to back off, and she's leaving, and then the egg opens up, and you just see Ripley give this look you fucked up, and just absolutely unleashes with everything, flamethrower, pulse rifle, grenades, It's a great sequence of just her venting her absolute rage at this fucking thing.
And
No
again,
respect.
there's no dialogue. They could have done a version, and we've seen it a bunch of times, where the heroine or hero, they would say in that moment, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
Right? She doesn't do that.
it.
Again, goes down to behavior. That's what James Cameron really excelled at, And this is really a testament to when a creative filmmaker, writer, director, he really was on his game at this part of his career, and now he's just wasting his fucking time with his Avatar movie.
He's making lots of money though. Lots of
he
money. Making more than any of us.
Well, the interesting thing about Cameron is I would never describe his screenplays as particularly complicated, right? It's not like there's insane twists, or like it's not like he's a Christopher Nolan type of writer director. They're generally quite utilitarian. They're quite straight up for the most part. What you see is what you get. He's just a very good he's got a very good talent for crafting solid, interesting characters and putting them into scenarios that just keep you invested. That's ultimately what he does really well. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's done to an extremely high standard. That's what I appreciate about him as a director.
It's nice that it's understandable. You know what I mean? I think anybody can watch this and enjoy the story and understand what's happening. I think a lot of Nolan stuff, I get lost in the weeds with that. And that's why I'm not a big fan of his. And I'm so sick of everybody talking about Interstellar this, Interstellar that. It's like, come on, guys. There's so many better movies.
Did people forget about Inception? I think that's his masterpiece, like his big budget masterpiece.
Inception is one of my favorite movies, but it's totally different to something like Aliens. Like, yes, they're both sci-fi, but comparing them, I feel like you almost can't even do that. They're so different.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Drinker, since you mentioned the agreement that Ripley had with the alien queen, that's like one of the only, well, at this point in time, and from Alien to Aliens, I think that's the only like positive interaction a person has had with a xenomorph. Positive, I guess, right? I mean,
these xenomorphs, they're not so bad.
Yeah, I know, right? But so what do you think if Ripley had just respected the agreement they made, in passing, she left, didn't cause any damage, do you think they would have been able to leave just scot-free, or did you think the aliens might go after
I think the queen was out to protect her eggs and to some extent herself. So what she really wanted was for Ripley to get the fuck out of that room, and then she would probably swarm her with drones once she was at a safe distance.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like, because the egg opening up is the thing that really triggers Ripley to start opening fire on it. I get the impression that wasn't intentional on the Queen's part. She was it's just bad timing or something. You can imagine like the egg opens up and the Queen's like, "Oh fuck, why did you do that?"
I really like that though, because every single time that we've seen these eggs function, and I believe this is the case even after Aliens, they're kind of activated by movement. If something is nearby and it's moving, it's going to open up. That's just what it does. That's its nature. And I think it's also fair to assume that, okay, the Queen might have some kind of like hive mind with the aliens. Hive mind with an egg? Like that, to me, feels like a lot more of a stretch, which means that the alien Queen was essentially, I guess, hoisted by her own petard. Like, it's like, oh, well, damn, my eggs are just going to do their thing, and that's what got us all killed.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder... Oh, wait, Random, you go.
I was going to say, I wanted to mention as well insane practical effects for the alien Queen.
Yes.
And how you really don't see anything like this, or as far as I can think, we never saw anything like this again, because this was 1986. This was done by Stan Winston, who then went on to do like Jurassic Park. And with Jurassic Park, like there are a lot of practical effects in Jurassic Park, more than people realize. But the larger, wider shots like this kind of thing that you would see on screen, that would all have been CG. That was the big breakthrough in Jurassic Park. Whereas with Aliens, that was 4 guys in a giant suit that was being dangled under a crane.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and there's videos you can see from behind the scenes where they made like this dummy test version of the Queen to see if they could even pull it off. and it's essentially been constructed with like bin bags and like bits of cardboard, where they just like strap these guys back to back sideways to operate the arms, and then 2 on the legs, that kind of thing.
And even that looked impressive.
Yeah,
that's the thing, like, because there's never a moment where I'm looking at the alien queen and thinking, "Oh God, it's so fake looking," or it moves really clunky. Like it feels real. It looks real. It moves in a natural way, like a real living creature. The work, and I imagine a lot of this is down to Cameron being a total perfectionist. They probably had to do many takes to get it to look just right. But wow, it was worth it.
Well, Drinker, I have a question, and Random and Kyle, everybody. But I'm wondering, there's always a conversation. I think people nowadays, they're so much more interested in looking at practical effects because it's just special. Alien, like, these are awesome. And I wonder, I just haven't looked it up. I'm just kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are. Why don't we get more practical effects? Is it cheaper, or is it like more expensive? Does it take more time to develop? Is it because, I don't know, they're so used to doing CG at this point? Why bother? I don't really understand that.
The short answer is they're fucking lazy, because it takes harder work and time to R&D it, etc. You just you talking about how they constructed something out of cardboard and 4 guys in it. It's just that they don't want to deal with that. Studios don't want to deal with that stuff. They don't want to pay for it. They just want to have it done inside the computer. And I've said it before, like the simple answer to it is that it comes down to laziness.
It is, and it's time as well. Like when you're on set shooting a practical effect like this alien queen, or even something like, say, the pulse rifles, shooting the alien drones and like having them all explode with pyrotechnics going off and shit. That all takes a long time to set up. And if you get it wrong, you've got to do the whole thing again. And all that time, while that's going on, you're having to pay the actors, you're having to pay all the crew who are sitting around waiting for you to get ready for your next take on this. That all adds up really fucking quickly. So it's actually cheaper to do it in CGI for all of those reasons, because you just get your actor firing or pretending to fire a gun, and we'll CGI in the bullets later, and then we'll CGI in the impacts on a CGI alien, and it allows you to get through principal photography way quicker and then save yourself money ultimately.
And generally speaking, that's true. And we can go into a little examination on this. In general, that's true. But with James Cameron, he has the world at his fingertips. And this is the clip that I was talking about showing you. James Cameron did an interview in which he was asked about the practical effects of this movie, and his answer was, "Look, if I was making it today, or if I had the technology today and I had it back then, the alien queen would have been CG."
Oh,
and I'm just
nice.
Isn't that tragic?
Yeah. So when what you're saying, Drinker, is true generally, but when it comes to James Cameron, he can do whatever the fuck he wants, yet he would choose that resource or that way of going about it of CGI, which just astounds me, because it's like he's ignoring the masterful nature of what they did here. As wow.
The James Cameron, much like Ridley Scott, like the James Cameron that we have today is not the same James Cameron that we had back in 1986. His whole mindset as a filmmaker is completely different now, and it's not for the better, sadly.
Well, you could trust James Cameron to at least give you a masterful CGI shot, right? I mean, those Avatar movies, for as dog as they are, they look great.
He doesn't obviously compromise on quality of visuals, which is nice. Like the Avatar movies definitely look nice, but that's it. Ultimately, they are. They're just like glorified tech demos, really. And again, like I think people's tendencies as creatives tend to get exaggerated more and more the older they get. So when I was talking before about how Cameron's not exactly known for doing super complex, mind-bending scripts with crazy twists or like wacky concepts or whatever, that trait has now become more and more extreme in the world of Avatar, where it's like you've got the most basic story imaginable, where it's basically just 2 people fall in love from different like warring tribes, and their story is just set in against this backdrop of a big epic conflict between 2 factions. That's all it is.
That's it.
It is so basic.
You know, for a second, I thought you were starting to talk about the plot of Titanic, and then I realized, oh yeah, you're talking about Avatar.
It's not that different, though, is it?
Yeah, it is. All right. Yeah.
People fall in love, epic disaster in the background, and ultimately the visuals of Titanic are what people remember. Really, it's like, hey, they built a fucking entire ship so they could sink it for this because it looks amazing. Great. And I've always said it's an amazing disaster movie. It's a pretty crappy love story, though. But you know.
I'd say with the practical versus CGI thing, just quickly, is I think a large part of it comes down to flexibility, because you may not have your designs finalized when you're filming something. This was a case in a bunch of the Marvel movies where they're just wearing a green suit because they didn't know what the design was going to be. But like there's pros and cons to doing both, and I would never say that just because something is CG it's worse. It's because people don't know how to use CG. If you over rely on it when you shouldn't be relying on it, like it's a tool like any other. I mean, the go-to example will be like the Lord of the Rings. Like the Lord of the Rings heavily uses both kinds of effects. James Cameron in his career has heavily used both kinds of effects, like the T-1000, for example. A bunch of that is practical, but there's obviously like groundbreaking CGI in there as well. And there was a quote from him when he was working on Avatar, when because Avatar is a lot of the movie is entirely CG. The characters, the backgrounds, everything is created in a computer. And then there's entire scenes where the opposite is true, where it's actors on a set. And some of it's going to be a hybrid where you have a human interacting with an alien or whatever. And when he was filming on the real sets, he said that like he would wish, like, damn, I wish I was doing this in CG, because then I could just move, I could go into the computer and just move this rock over here or whatever. You know, it's so much easier to do that kind of thing. But then when he was doing the fully CG stuff, he would be like, damn, I wish we were doing this for real, because then it would be so much easier to account for like computer generated things interacting with each other, you know, water physics or something bouncing off of something else. There's things that you have to account for when you're working with CG. Lighting is another big one that you just take for granted when you're pointing a camera at something that's real. So like, to answer the question of would the Alien Queen be worse if it was CG, I think not necessarily. I think if James Cameron was doing it, then not necessarily. But to use the example of Alien versus Predator, the Alien Queen shows up in that. It's full CG once it escapes and it's running around. And they basically treat it like a Tyrannosaurus. It's just a big, dumb dinosaur that's running around smashing things. Yeah.
Wow, that's sad. I want to see that one too, Alien versus Predator. This one's fun.
It's dumb.
It's nowhere near as fun as you would imagine based on the premise. I think that's the most disappointing thing of it. It's just actually quite dull for a lot of it, which is such a shame.
There is one scene where an alien fights a predator. Apart from the scene with the Alien Queen, that movie spends about 90 seconds having aliens fighting predators. Which sucks.
Why can't we just get what we want, Random? Can I just get what I want in a movie? I want this to happen, so I want this to happen. It's not going to, though. That's something that worries me, just real quick, off tangent, is I guess Kirsten Dunst, she's talking about how she wants to be in a new Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. Sam Raimi's now kind of coming out and saying he's interested in maybe pittering around with the idea. They will not give Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man a son. He needs to have a son. I think all of us young men that watched him growing up, including me, really looked up to that character. And if we just had like see ourselves as a young man looking up to him and following his footsteps, my gosh, just perfect. That's not going to happen though. So
Brawler, it's going to be a daughter who's a boss babe, who don't take no advice from men. Okay.
Naturally. I don't know about you guys, right? I'm kind of soured on this idea of like, hey, let's catch up with our favorite heroes, but now they're a parent and like they can't really be heroes anymore because they got to spend half their lives like looking after their kids and like dealing with all the shit, and you know, they're not really the person you remember anymore. Like I don't love that as a progression of a character, because if I see a Spider-Man movie, I want to see Spider-Man doing Spider-Man shit. I don't want to see him like juggling daycare with like his naggy wife and like all the other stupid shit that the parents have to deal with. It just, I don't know. It just feels so derivative at this point, and it feels like it cheapens the character.
It's terrible how there's no end in sight either. I wish all of us would learn that lesson and stop giving these idiots our money, because I don't want to see that. I don't want to see our favorite characters fall down that route either. Who wants to see that? Who wants to see, your favorite character as a dad, dealing with the nagging wife or whatever else? That's I definitely see that happening there.
I mean, they could go down a more dramatic route in which Mary Jane and Peter Parker couldn't get
they're
pregnant.
Divorced.
No, not divorced, but they couldn't get pregnant.
Hold on, you've just triggered like a core memory for me. I swear I heard someone on a podcast talking about this because I'm not familiar with Spider-Man comics. Isn't there a version where like Peter Parker kills Mary Jane with his radioactive semen?
Oh gosh.
I swear that's a thing.
That's canon, bro.
I hope I didn't just make that up, in which case I'm just fucking weird. Like, I swear that's a thing.
Radioactive semen.
It's going to be awesome if you just pulled that out of your ass.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope I didn't.
That's definitely Toby's story. No.
Chat says can confirm. All right.
Yeah.
You're not making it up. You're not crazy, bro. I'm just kind of wondering, just overall as like a blanket idea with aliens, I've heard that, this is like supposed to highlight maternity a lot. And, I guess you see a lot of resemblances of that. Obviously the chest bursters is sort of like a birth. It's, of course, Ripley's very, motherly to Newt and trying to protect her and kind of mother her as her own, her child. And then you have, of course, the Queen, the mother of all these aliens. And I just kind of wonder, is there a message to all of this? Why did James Cameron choose to highlight this idea so strongly? Or am I just tripping balls and I made all that up? Because I'm pretty sure I've heard this was like a common idea.
I mean, I think the genesis of the entire story, according to Cameron, was this idea of two mothers battling over a child. That hence the alien queen. That's a mother. Like Ripley has essentially destroyed all of her children. From Ripley's perspective, the aliens took her child from her because of her being trapped out in deep space for all those years, and her own child died, and Newt becomes that surrogate child for her, and so that's that conflict between them. The idea of the motherhood and the protective mother being turned into a kind of warrior, it's a recurring theme, excuse me, throughout a lot of Cameron's work. He's definitely got a thing for not just strong female characters, but like that exploration of motherhood and the protective, almost vengeful side of it, and what that brings out in female characters. So it's definitely a thing for him that he likes to explore in his movies.
Yeah, I mean, that culminated in Avatar 2, where you had pregnant Na'vi running around with bows and arrows, taking it very literally.
I legit can't even remember what happens in that fucking movie.
I remember the space whales had goo that makes you immortal, but that's not why they came to the planet. They were there for another reason, and then they were like, oh yeah, what happens if we drill into the whale's brain? And then they found out what they do. It was quite funny, but yeah.
Movies are wild, man.
Well, you do remember it well, Random.
I've seen it once. Yeah, I've seen it once. I've seen Little Platoon's video on it, which I would highly recommend. That movie is just off the wall nonsense. Like we were saying earlier that Cameron typically doesn't write like complicated movies. I think that's true of the first Avatar. The second one has some really weird concepts in it that I don't think he thought through properly. Let's put it that way.
He was on something.
Yeah.
Darn. Well, yeah, I was just kind of wondering about that because I don't know. It seems like there's just a lot of symbolism for motherhood. And, you're right. I don't know what his thing is. He likes having a strong woman at the forefront. He's given us some good ones, though. I mean,
yeah,
I guess that was
arguably the best.
Yeah, Drinker, that's something that I recall hearing you talk about a lot. Is like whenever a female lead is referenced, unfortunately, it's not our fault. It's not the guy's fault that all the new female leads are pretty dog. They're terrible. Not all of them, but most of them. And you always harken back to Ripley as a prime example of the female lead that every director, creator should look back on as a great example to use. So why do you think that is? What do you think it is about Ripley that makes her so exceptional?
Well, I mean, it pisses me off that I have to keep referencing a character from like 30 fucking years ago, 40 years ago at this point, actually. It's like we've never advanced beyond that, which is just depressing. But Yeah, I mean, to answer your question about why she works so well, like she is an everyman in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, she definitely has skills that come from her background and so on, but she's not Superman. She's not like exceptionally strong or tough or anything like that. She is just literally a intelligent, resourceful person who thinks pretty well under pressure. And who asks a lot of the questions that a sensible, rational person would ask. Like in the first Alien movie, she's reluctant to bring Kane back on board when he's been infected with the facehugger because she knows it's dangerous, but she gets overruled by Ash because he's got ulterior motives. She does question things, but she gets overruled by people because she's not that senior. In Aliens, she again questions Gorman and his laid back attitude to like, security and being overconfident and stuff. Again, she gets overruled and ignored because she's not an expert. And it's not until she's forced to take command because there's literally no one else around that they do start listening to her and respecting her. And again, there's a vulnerability to her. There's a humanity to her. She does, like, she's not without compassion towards people, but like she's not a saint or an angel either. She's got flaws like any human. And so they did this crazy thing where they made her a relatively intelligent, relatively resourceful, believable human being and put her into an extraordinary situation and turned her loose. It's not exactly rocket science, as I've said. James Cameron doesn't do anything wild and crazy with his screenplays, but what he does really well with characters like Ripley and Sarah Connor.
I'm glad you mentioned like the compassion too, because she's not a particularly like friendly or nice presence in a room. She's kind of cold naturally. That's how I feel, at least watching her.
Oh, she's very warm with Newt though. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's where you get it. But with everybody else, she's not very, I don't know. She's not,
with Hicks, she is. I mean, she gives him thirsty eyes multiple times.
Yeah.
It's great.
All right.
They have a few moments. They bond over a gun.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think in the room, she's not,
Yeah, I mean, for obvious reasons, she's not trusting towards other people, especially company representatives, which totally makes sense. She's actually kind of intimidated by the Marines, like when they've got the guns everywhere and stuff. Like she's just like, that's not the world that she lives in at all. So she's happy to stay away from them as much as she can, but gradually has to work with them, starts to like develop a bit of compassion towards some of them. And yeah, when people start getting killed, she ain't celebrating, even though she doesn't like a lot of them. She's just as upset as the rest of them, but she does what has to be done to like at least get them out of the situation and then start to try and figure out a plan. And she's very much like, if you're respectful towards her, she's probably going to give you the time of day at the very least. So
I'd say like what it comes down to, which is rare to find in not just female characters, but like characters in general these days, it seems, is vulnerability. James Cameron is not afraid to have, if we use the example Ripley and Sarah Connor, to have them placed in like really, really uncomfortable situations that are fucking brutal and like impossible to get out of. And then the characters then have to work out a way to get out of them with as few casualties as possible. The characters that she's surrounded by are not the nicest people. She doesn't have to be particularly nice to them. And all of that just leads to them being really not very comfortable with where they are, even if the aliens were not a factor, and even if the Terminator was not hunting her down. She's not in a good place. And I mean, I was going to say this is a relatively modern example, but it came out 10 years ago now. But an example of this being done really well is Emily Blunt's character in Sicario, which is a fantastic movie. And she, like, the whole point of the character is that she is not equipped to deal with what she is put into. And they handle that so well. It's a really, really good movie, that one.
Yeah, that is good. We don't talk about the second one, though.
No.
I've only seen it once, and that's a movie I don't remember.
You're not missing out. Yeah, I think, I do like how vulnerable she is. I think, it's nice. It's nice seeing a character go through what anyone would go through, no matter what gender you are, man or woman. You're going to be thrown around. You're going to be in hell and high water here because, in real life, there's no grace that's going to be bestowed on anybody, no matter what, unless you have some reason to have earned it at that point. And this certainly is not the case in this. And I think
I was going to say as well, you could. One of the interesting points to make about how she's treated is that I don't think anyone ever looks down on her or treats her differently because she's female. Because the Colonial Marines themselves are a pretty equal opportunities bunch. They've got a bunch of female characters in amongst them who are just as like tough as the male Marines. Like they're bantering away with them and stuff. Their distrust of her and their dislike of her just stems from the fact that she's not one of them. She's an outsider, and probably they see her as I don't know, like a bit elitist because she's a flight officer from a commercial ship, probably like someone who's quite skilled and higher up than them in the great hierarchy of the company, and so they probably don't trust her for that reason as well.
It's also, I think it's no accident that it's actually the ladies in the Marines. I believe it's Vasquez and Ferro who are the first ones to be like, hey, who's Snow White? Like, who is Ripley and what is she doing here? It's not the men who are like, why is this woman in our space? Because there are women already in their space.
That's a good point. That totally went over my head. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I like that. And they grow to respect her because of her performance and because of the choices she makes. That's nice. That's how it is.
Even before they get to the planet, she demonstrates to, I believe it's Apone and Hicks when she's using the power loader. And she's like, I can be useful. And then she demonstrates that she can be useful, and they kind of laugh at her like, okay, I was not expecting you to be able to do that. Yeah. And then she helps out a little bit. Yeah, it's a nice scene.
Yeah. Well, she says it with a little bit of innuendo in her tone. Where do you want it?
All right. While carrying a missile, right? Phallic symbolism.
Nice, Kyle. Oh, man. Do you guys have like an unpopular opinion about aliens? Like, there's...
I don't know, man. Like, because there's not really many aspects of the film I can pick apart and say, like, oh, this fucking sucked.
Well, Random, you were talking about, didn't you think that Alien was better than Aliens? Like, just quality-wise?
I also don't think that's an unpopular opinion, really, because though I think the general consensus is that Alien is a better movie. It's just that Aliens is more rewatchable, more fun, more entertaining. I would be far more likely to be like, let's stick a film on, let's watch Aliens. But there is a lot, well, no, a lot is incorrect, but there is more to appreciate in filmmaking in Alien, I would say.
Yeah.
It is a higher quality movie, I think. But we're talking about like comparing a 10 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 here. Like these films are amazing. What is there to like? The only thing I can criticize in the movie is the thing with the beacon. That's the only thing in the writing that I can criticize. Apart from that, I mean, it's going to be superficial things like, okay, I could see the wire on that guy in the suit, but like, I just don't care, Unpopular opinion on Aliens is really difficult to think of one.
Wow.
The only things that I can think of are a couple of the shots with the rear projection. That's it. Like Ripley holding Newt when they're at the top of the platform and they're backing up and the explosions are happening. There are a couple of shots that don't really match in terms of the lighting, and you can see that there's a bit of there's a focus mismatch going on, and so. But yeah, those are minimal though.
Yeah, and I think I'm always going to make a few allowances for a film that was made almost 40 years ago.
Right.
It's the limitations of the technology at the time, but yeah, none of that spoils the experience for me. And yeah, in terms of the writing, the script and stuff, I can't really think of much to pick apart.
That's solid. Crazy to think that this is literally 40 years old. Like it doesn't even sit with me that that's the case. I'm so used to just watching movies like this and thinking it's, last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy because how different
I've interviewed a few of the cast on my channel, and like I am kind of struck when I'm talking to them, like, oh wow, you look really old now.
You are not from Aliens.
I hate
who did you talk to?
I had Mark Ralston, who played Drake. And
I listened to that one, yeah.
I had William Hope on, who played Gorman.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Nice.
And I may just get a few more at some point.
Nice.
That'd be awesome.
Weaver herself.
You got to get Sigourney.
I'd have to go some to get her. Yeah.
I still remember when you had Russell Crowe on, man. That was awesome. Jeez.
That was surreal.
That was crazy, man. I don't know how you did that. That was huge.
Yeah, a lot of shenanigans behind the scenes, but yeah, it was cool to talk to him.
Respectable, man. Well, I think unless you guys don't have any final thoughts about aliens, I think we tapped the well and we had a lot of great conversations. So I just want to thank you guys for coming on and talk with me on the channel. It was a lot of fun get to host you guys. So thank you for your time, Drinker and Random and Kyle. I appreciate it. And if for whatever reason the viewers are not watching Drinker or Random or Kyle, be sure to check them out. Description below. Little box office brawler. Maybe I can help a little bit. I try. So yes, give all three of these guys the sub. Even Drinker, he can always have more subs. So yeah, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming on. And sorry to everybody in the chat. I'm not used to having a lot of people in the chat. Usually there's a nice group, and I'm happy with our group. But yeah, sorry I didn't get to any of the chats, but we appreciate all you talking with us today. If you want to watch next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about Pan's Labyrinth. So I'm excited to get into that one with an exciting panel. But at the end of the day, we appreciate you all for watching today.
What kind of person are you? Are you the kind that sees signs, sees miracles? Or do you believe that people just get lucky?